These images show part of the northern Sangre de Cristo Range at sunset as seen from West Cliff in the wet mountain valley to the range's east on September 3rd of 2025, the evening before I attempted to climb Mount Lindsey. This footage shows the more southern parts of the range while driving through the San Luis Valley during a trip to climb Blanca Peak back in July of 21, with the Blanca group of mountains, also known as the Sierra Blanca, which includes Mount Lindsey, shown here a little more closely. The overall massif is seen again here from somewhere near Alamosa, though Mount Lindsey isn't visible from this vantage point. This picture from Crestone Needle, however, reveals Lindsey on the left alongside Blanca. This next image was taken on a flight from Phoenix to Denver and shows the Blanca group in late spring. You can see how Mount Lindsey stands somewhat apart from the other three 14ers in the massif, in a very similar way, say, to Wilson Peak or Mount Democrat. This much closer view is from Blanca to the immediate west. While these shots from just above 13,000 feet reveal the north face and the northwest ridge of the mountain, the latter of which is the route shown in this video. While it's unclear when and by whom the first ascent of the mountain was made, both the Hayden and Wheeler surveys explored and mapped the region in 1875 and noted the peak as Old Baldy, which was a reference to its relative lack of trees and a name that it had had for some number of years beforehand. In the 1950s, the name of the mountain was changed to Mount Lindsey in honor of Malcolm Lindsey, who had grown up in Trinidad during the late 1800s and during his youth developed an affinity for the nearby peak. Later, he became a prominent attorney as well as a leader in civic and church organizations. He also became heavily involved in the Colorado Mountain Club, leading many youths on climbs up Old Baldy and eventually serving as the club's president for a time. For more information about the Sangre de Cristo Range and about the Blanca group of mountains, do see my Blanca Peak and Crestone Peak videos. Mount Lindsey's northwest ridge involves fairly low overall endurance stats, but is defined by its climbing challenges, which are solidly Class 3 at minimum and culminate in the Crux wall shown here, about halfway up the final ridge stretch. In addition, the route involves a considerable amount of loose terrain, especially above the Crux, and a pretty fair amount of route finding overall. The north face route up the mountain, or northwest gully route, which is considered more as the standard route, involves the same endurance stats, but effectively trades the climbing difficulty and exposure of the ridge route for the negotiation of the fairly steep and loose gully shown here. With snow present, the gully presents a more stable climb with the right gear, but without snow it becomes quite loose, which may weigh into a decision as to which route to use. These are the directions to the Lily Lake trailhead. Do be aware that the road approach after turning off the highway is over 22 miles, about 15 of which is dirt, and the last several miles of which become quite rough and steep and require a high clearance vehicle and probably four-wheel drive. And finally, as of this video, the upper reaches of these routes are on private property and an electronic waiver must be signed in order to climb them. So do make sure this is in order before going. So anyway, enjoy the footage. It's about 5:20 in the morning. I'm going down County Road 550. I just turned off of Highway 69 back there, about a half a mile north of the town of Gardner. I think this is going to turn to dirt in a few miles, and I got a long road approach to this trailhead. It's supposed to turn to dirt and get worse as I go on, but we'll see how it goes. Hopefully not too badly. So I think about 7 miles in, the road has turned to dirt and I believe become County Road 580. Okay, I'm almost 12 miles into this, and I've got this intersection here. 581 to the right, 580 to the left. I want to stay on 580. Road's still good. Still pretty good. It's gotten a little tiny bit rougher in places, but definitely narrower though. I'm about 16 miles past the highway intersection, and it is getting rougher considerably. Not terrible though. Just gotta slow down a bit. It's gotten quite a bit rougher and steeper, I have to say. See how much longer I can make this. Got a few more miles still. So finally I've gotten started on foot here. It's about 6:30 a.m. after I think what was definitely the gnarliest road approach to a trailhead I've ever engaged in. I'm glad to be starting on foot here. I'm on the Lily Lake Trail. So I'm going to be attempting to climb Mount Lindsey today. The endurance stats for it are kind of low to mid. I think about 8.5 miles total distance from the upper trailhead, and about 3,500 feet of elevation gain total is all. And it's another one of those instances of lower endurance stats due to the combination of a fairly high trailhead and the summit being just over 14,000. But the definitive aspect is going to be some class 3 climbing up higher. I do plan to try the northwest ridge route. We'll see how that goes. Right now headed in a south direction from the trailhead. I think after a mile or so I'm going to leave this Lily Lake Trail and head on a path that'll take me ultimately to Mount Lindsey. So should be an exciting day. First time back in the Blanca group since I climbed Blanca itself, I think 4 years ago. It's definitely an amazing group of mountains. And I've reached this meadow shortly after the trailhead. And up there, you can't see Mount Lindsey yet. I think that's maybe concealed over there, but up there you can see, however, Blanca. Top of it bathed in the initial sunlight of the day. Colorado's 4th highest mountain there. I'm still just strolling along these level stretches. I've gained tiny bits of elevation, but not much. Well, I'm not all that far into this, and I got into this sign here. It says Lily Lake to the right. And just after that trail junction, I've reached this crossing of the Huerfano River. There's a jumble of logs up there, and I don't know, I don't like the looks of those logs. I'm trying to find a rock option here. I think I'm gonna try to go across right here on these rocks. See how that goes. That was actually a little precarious. I might have been better advised to go for the logs, or even possibly just take off my shoes and socks and walk across. But here appears to be the continuation of the path here. Still on the path through these dense wood and foliage just after that creek crossing. Yeah, well, I see we've gotten off track after crossing the creek there. My understanding that after the creek crossing, the trail is supposed to veer up and to the left and away from the creek. So I think this might be it. Check it out. Alright, so after kind of fumbling around in the dense woods back there with a bunch of different confusing social paths, I finally, I think, found the proper path that emerges and goes leftward away from the creek. And I'm supposed to come up and hike along the right side of a boulder field. And I think I've arrived at that. That was kind of annoying back there. You know, I think rather than having to hop those boulders you saw up there, I think the path actually just kind of parallels below that boulder field through this area. At least I hope so. So like I said, the path has, as you can see there, begun to gain a lot more elevation. And it's much more discernible, thankfully. Continue upward. Holy crap. This part is really gruelingly steep through here. And it's still ascending, but it's gotten a little less steep here than it was back there for a while. Still up here, paralleling the creek. Path along there is kind of coincides with the stream for a minute. Alright, just crossed the stream back there. I think I am close to 11.8, and approaching tree line here as I get up into the rocky or higher terrain up here. And just heading briefly back into the last remains of the woods up here. And I'm out of the woods. Pretty steep. The route has been pretty relentlessly grueling for the most part ever since just after crossing the creek. Well, wasn't done with the woods yet, after all. So I'm up here in the vicinity of 12,000, I believe, and here's for me anyway, right now is the first glimpse of today's destination, Mount Lindsey. And I believe this part right here is actually the crux of the route, the Crux wall. So there it is. You keep going. Don't be intimidated now. Getting sunshine. This is quite a scene. Trees are continuing to thin out up here. Well, like kind of right in front of the sun there, you see the 13er iron nipple rises to a little over 13.5, and of course Mount Lindsey over there I just showed you. Don't think I want to go around those rocks that way. I think I need to go up a little more into these trees again. Yeah. Now that's quite a change of ambiance now. Way up here in the open. Straight ahead, yeah, again there, see Mount Lindsey. And over there is Blanca. I think next I'm going to be descending a little bit down more into the basin, but then quickly reascending what looks like another grueling stretch up toward that saddle you see up there. Back up where the path is coming from, kind of lower in this basin now before I get to the slope up to the saddle there. And I'm kind of already angling out of this basin going to get really real up here in a moment. So I think I'm a little over 12,000 here, and I have begun the ascent up to the saddle, which is I think 13,150 or something like that. So I have probably about 1,000 feet to make it up to the saddle. Now this stretch has not been too steep just yet. We'll see what it holds in store ahead though. Right now I'm still just kind of gradually ascending on this sort of dirt, rock, grassy path. If you can see that kind of sub-ridge straight ahead, I believe I'm going to be getting up to that, and then from there following that to the actual overall saddle between 13er iron nipple there, which rises to just over 13.5, and that in Mount Lindsey itself, which is concealed once again. Right now it's a little steeper. It's not too loose really, not too bad in that area. There's Blanca again. He keeps pulling my eyes in. Still ascending fairly steeply toward the sub-ridge there. I've dubbed it, just about to that. Looking down there at the basin, I've reached the subsidiary ridge, and I'm gonna follow that up to the saddle now. I've got maybe a couple more 100 vertical feet to go up this thing till I get to the saddle. Well, this is a pretty grueling haul up this thing. Pretty grueling route so far. This part of the path is sand, but looseness, like I said, hasn't really been a problem yet. We'll see about it on the way down though. Continuing onward up here. I think that horizon you see right up there is not the saddle. You've got some sort of stretch of boulders to negotiate before I get to the saddle. So that's a false saddle, as it were. Reached about 13,000 now. The sign stating that as of now you have to sign a waiver beyond this point, and to get to the actual saddle you have to do an ascending traverse up those boulders there. I'm going to get started with that. Figured it was as good a time as any to retool and go to helmet cam. The scenes in my face up these rocks so far. It's not really much of a path. There are cairns though, as you can see. Okay, there's kind of a path right up there. Here. There's a sub-saddle back there, that sign. So from the saddle, the remaining route goes either on or not far from the ridge crest on its left. First, you briefly follow a level stretch of path just left of the ridge, then begin upward, climbing on and just left of the ridge proper. Just prior to reaching the Crux wall, you descend to circumvent some difficulties up higher, then negotiate the wall itself. Above the wall, again continue on or left of the ridge to reach the top. Climbing the gully route has you following the same initial stretch of path, but then veering left to head up the gully. After climbing the gully, you traverse up the mountain's north face to eventually reach the summit ridge. Alright, gotten started. Final stretch up to the top. I think I'll be following along the ridge briefly till the path for the gully route branches off to the left. I'm going to stay more on the ridge or close to the ridge proper. This cairn right here, you don't want to go that way. You want to stay up closer to the ridge in order to do the northwest ridge route. ways down there is a path. Maybe you can see it over there. I think that's still the path how you get to the gully route. And I don't want to go down that low, so I've just been kind of winging it up higher here. I don't know if at some point I'll reach some semblance of a path or markers or something, but I'm going to kind of keep trying to go along the ridge here for now. Alright, I'm at this strange point here. I don't think I'm going to go around there. I don't know about down around there either. I might just try going across this here. Just kind of turn around like so. Seeming to work out okay so far. You can tell this little way here has been tread. Don't want to get too far down though. Well, definitely been negotiating some things so far that are at least class 2 plus, I'd say. So at this point, I felt like I was getting too far below the ridge and decided to climb up more, which seemed to put me back on a better course. It was around this area that I came across 3 other climbers, and for parts of the remaining ascent, and especially on the descent, everyone kind of helped with route finding. It was definitely beneficial to have that many more eyes to find the best way to go. Here, I realized I had reached an impasse and had to descend back down in order to approach the Crux wall from a lower point, something the others had already realized and which I had forgotten to do to begin with. Here, I was ascending the bottom part of the Crux wall, and as you can see, the climbing had already become somewhat challenging. At this point, I had reached the base of the crack in the rock, and I ended up deciding to try and take what I had been given to understand was the Class 3 line which slants up to the left and away from the crack, while the others seemed to have found ways up the rock that were nearer to the crack. So once I made my way up the face of the wall, the exposure involved in turning this corner and getting up to the ridge was a little bit spooky. is. Right here, once again, I felt like I was getting too far below the ridge crest, so I doubled back and made my way up to it, which ended up being the right thing to do. happened here is that I inadvertently bypassed the high point just shown on its left and followed a path farther below the ridge's left side, when it might have been preferable to go over the top of the high point and continue more along the ridge crest. This may have led me along some rather loose terrain that I could have otherwise avoided.
A little loose here.
So this, I think, is the vicinity of the false summit, which I believe myself and the others ended up bypassing on the left. Again, the terrain may have been easier to just go over it, but oh well, it worked out anyway.
loose crap. It wasn't so bad on the way up as it is on the way down. Actually, some of this was kind of bad on the way up. Now it's worse. Be careful. the looseness down here, the stretch up the saddle, is a little more of a possibility slipping on the way down.
So it took me about 8 hours to make it up Mount Lindsey and back to the trailhead by way of the Northwest Ridge route, with about 4 of that to reach the top and about half an hour spent at the top, plus the requisite time for the tasks of documenting. Given the route's fairly low endurance stats, this probably speaks to the climbing challenges, but also to the route finding, which presents its own challenges both up higher and down lower. Following the creek crossing just after the Lily Lake Trail junction, it's easy to become enmeshed in the myriad of paths that go through the thick woods in the area, I imagine many of which exist due to others repeatedly going off in errant directions and having to backtrack. While I can't tell you exactly which path or paths to follow in this potentially confusing area, I will say, as I was discussing with one of the others, that this is likely an instance where a foreknowledge of the land features of the route can be useful. Keeping in mind that soon after the crossing you want to be headed upward and just right of the boulder slope with a fairly narrow section of woods between the path and the boulders should eventually lead you to the right path. As for the upper route, which I don't recall being all that well marked overall, do avoid getting too far below the ridge on the initial stretches after the saddle, or among other possibilities, you could end up inadvertently climbing the gully route. And again, make sure to keep below the difficulties on the ridge proper as you approach the Crux, lest you cliff out like I did and have to backtrack. After the Crux, I found that in places it wasn't all that clear whether to take a path on the ridge itself or just below it on the left. I felt like I tended to get too low in places. Again, the general guidelines may be instructive, so it could be helpful to consider that overall, the route on this stretch stays on or near the top of the ridge for its duration, and that there might not necessarily be just one single best or viable way to go. Another observation about this route is the overall steepness, even given the relatively modest elevation gain. I suppose this is largely due to the first mile or so having virtually no elevation gain to it. I'd say I found the steep stretch not long after the creek crossing to be the most grueling, but also the portion of the climb to the saddle just under and up to 13,000 feet. Also, one further challenge in doing either of the routes discussed here is logistical. As I mentioned before, this was one of the longest and roughest dirt road approaches to a trailhead I've ever experienced, maybe the most so. And what's more, even the turnoff from the highway is already in a remote area that will likely require quite a drive to reach. Finally, I would like to say thank you to the others I met on the mountain on this occasion. Nice meeting you, and I hope you enjoy many more of these experiences in the future. All that being said, I'll leave you with some final images. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.